and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Shook Sports Take podcast. I hope you are all doing well. Today is the Central Division's turn for the All-Star break reviews of every NBA team this season. The last one I just did was the Atlantic Division. So this episode will be the Bulls, the Pistons, the Pacers, the Bucks, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. This has been an interesting group. We'll kick things off right away with the Chicago Bulls. What was really a hot start for the Chicago Bulls, it's to nobody's surprise really cooled off. They're going to be in that play-in tournament as they have been for the last 4 or 5 seasons. Currently sitting 11th in the Eastern Conference at 24-31. Here's the thing, man. I was kind of excited about the way that this team was starting to shape up before the trade deadline. And the trade deadline was a disaster for Bulls fans. I have no idea what the front office decided to start doing. And I like some of the moves. I like the move for Anthony Simons, who wasn't really getting an opportunity to showcase his skill in Boston. So it's a good move to bring him in, especially if they were planning to move off Kobe White. But they also brought in Jaden Ivey and Colin Sexton and Rob Dillingham. At one point, they had 12 guards on the roster, and they didn't have a player over 6'10". Now, obviously, they changed that. They brought in Gershon Yabusele as well as Nick Richards. So they made a couple of, I don't know, the deadline made this roster get really messy really quickly. Now, I think a lot of it has to do with these guys are all on short contracts, which gives the Bulls a lot of space to build a true roster next year. But I just don't understand it. I really don't. I think that they are probably, again, they're going to get into the play-in. They're going to fall short, well short of the playoffs probably. But I just don't know what this team's going to look like next year anymore. I really don't. As for some of the individual players, Josh Giddey is still playing at a fairly high level, 18, 8, and 8. That's really good from a guy that we didn't see this coming from when he got moved out of OKC. We knew there was talent there, but we didn't see borderline all-star being the case for Josh Giddey, and that's what he was this season. It looked like he was certainly going to be on that team, and then cooled off toward the middle of the year, got hurt, dealt with some injuries, which has been an issue. But Josh Giddey's playing at a very good level. Buzelis as well, averaging 15 and 5. He is coming along very nicely in his development. And then again, I think they added some nice pieces. I think Anthony Simons is a good player. He being given the lead ball handling role, he can create for not only himself but his teammates as well. He's currently only averaging 14 and 2, but we know from his time in Portland that he can be very efficient and be a 2-level, 3-level scorer for an offense. And I like Anthony Simons. I really do. Don't get it twisted. He learned a lot from Damian Lillard in Portland. This is a guy with a lot of talent. He just needs the opportunity to showcase it. Now, I don't think he's going to get that on Chicago, and I think he's going to leave in free agency. I don't believe he has more than the ending of this year on that contract. But the rest of this team, they still have to deal with Patrick Williams, which that contract is nasty. He's not going anywhere. Jaden Ivey is a good piece. I like Jaden Ivey. I don't know if he'll still be in Chicago come next year either, but I could see that being the case. He is, again, a pretty reliable scorer. We saw that before Cade Cunningham really started to take over on the Pistons. And even when he was playing with Cade before the injury last season, he was a pretty crucial role. It just so happens that the Pistons kind of found a system that phased him out. But overall, the Bulls are a mess, to be honest. They're still shooting the 3 well. The highlight of this season for the Chicago Bulls is being able to retire Derrick Rose's number. That's really what it's going to come down to. That's what it is. That is the best moment that Chicago's going to have this season. And they're kind of just riding it out from this point. They're on a 6-game losing streak. At the time of this recording, the season starts back from the All-Star break. I do not have high hopes for the Chicago Bulls the rest of the way, and it's going to be a very interesting offseason in Chicago. To the Cleveland Cavaliers, who I said in the early NBA takes that I thought this Cleveland team would be the favorite or one of the favorites to come out of the East alongside the New York Knicks. And it didn't originally look like it was going to play out that way. It looked like they were going to be low to mid playoff, probably go to the second round and get bounced. But they've really come alive here in the back half. They've gotten healthy. Allen, Mobley, Mitchell, all getting healthy. They've moved off Garland, who missed a lot of time. And they brought in James Harden. Now, this was a move when it happened right away. I wasn't super high on. I put it on my TikTok. It's in the description. Shook Sports Takes. I said that I don't know if Cleveland have the roster to win a championship this season, and moving off Darius Garland made the statement that you thought you did. I mean, we're talking about a 26-year-old two-time All-Star. Darius Garland still has super high potential. There's a lot of time for him to still develop, and admittedly, yes, he wasn't playing well this season, but it was more so because he was coming off this injury. However, we know what James Harden can bring. He was playing, I thought, at an all-star level this season. That didn't play out for him that way. 25 points and 8 assists. He can score himself. He can set up teammates all night. Guys are walking double-double at this point. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off Donovan Mitchell, which is a dangerous game because Mitchell's been having to do so much for the Cavaliers just to compete in games. And now he can rely on Harden to do some of the scoring. Mobley and Allen, like I said, they're getting healthy. They're still doing great things on defense. And that takes the pressure off of Mitchell. But the thing that scares me about this Cleveland team is I just don't know if they have the depth to really punish some of these other teams in the Eastern Conference. You look at Sam Merrill, who is actually having a pretty great season. He's shooting 47% from behind the line as a 3-and-D kind of guard. Dean Wade is still an option off this bench. He's not having his greatest year, shooting 41%, 34% from behind the arc. He is struggled, but again, he's missed a lot of time with injury as well. Then they brought in both Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder. Schroeder has struggled on the season. He's only averaging 12 and 5, and that is fine for some backup point guard play as long as he's not being asked to start anymore like he was in Sacramento. And then Keon Ellis has always been this guy that a lot of people are super high on, say there's a lot of potential there, but it's never quite translated. I do like the defensive qualities that Keon Ellis brings, but I mean, he has continued to not shoot at a very high percentage. He's shooting 36, which is around average for a 3-and-D shooter. And this Cleveland team is, I mean, Jalen Tyson's been great, but they really do lack depth, which is something that this Cleveland team has not lacked in a few years. They moved off DeAndre Hunter, which I thought was a very strange decision. I assume it was just to create more space for Jalen Tyson to get extra minutes, but I thought you needed to keep him. And yeah, so that's where I think this Cleveland team is going to find issues late down the stretch of the season and in the postseason. Of course, in the postseason, you're only looking like an 8-man rotation anyway, but it certainly can hold you back. We saw it hold back the New York Knicks last season and the season before that. But this Cleveland team does do a lot of things well. They score at the second highest rate per game as any other NBA team at 120 points. They are shooting well from the field. They could shoot better a little bit from the three, only 35% there. And then defensively, they are holding opponents to the ninth worst field goal percentage, which is great for them. Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen continue to be quite the problem down low in the post. They are 8th most block in the league, 5.2 a game, 9 steals, 8th in the league in that category as well. So Cleveland defensively, I like the starting five a lot. I think the starting five can compete with anybody else out east. It's just when you go into the bench that I think that they start to lose certain aspects of the game. Now, again, it is still a weak Eastern Conference. The Pistons have emerged incredibly well, played at a much higher level than we thought they would. That's a team I'm super high on now. The Boston Celtics have played really surprisingly well without Jason Tatum. If he comes back and makes the playoffs, that's a dangerous situation. The Knicks are what we thought they would be, right around that top three and top end of the spectrum of the Eastern Conference. Now, I'd actually say the Knicks have been a little bit disappointing since the NBA Cup win. But then you have the Cavs themselves, and in a weaker Eastern Conference, even though it's actually been a bit better than a lot of people expected, maybe they're thinking that they can squeak by if all they have to do is beat one of Boston or Detroit. Um, they probably like their odds against the Knicks. I just don't know if it's enough to beat whoever comes out of the Western Conference. So Cleveland seem to think that they can go all in. I'm not of that opinion. I think Cleveland probably lose at best in the Eastern Conference Finals. To the Detroit Pistons, who I said probably at best would be the 3 or 4. Boy, was I wrong. They are, in my opinion, definitely the best team in the Eastern Conference. They are the best defensive team in the NBA, sitting at first in the Eastern Conference, 40-13. I mean, this team is such a problem, and it's this mentality of the refs cannot call every foul down the floor, and that doesn't mean that they're hacking people. But they are very physical. They're going to touch you and do things to manipulate your ability to score the ball just enough to where the ref's going to say, I had to call one stronger than that. That's weak compared to the other one. We're going to let that go. And so they get a very physical style of defense after the opponent, and it works, man. They hold teams to the third lowest scoring points per game, the second lowest field goal percentage. They average the most blocks and the most steals in the NBA. This defense is so strong, and it's because of guys like Sword Thompson, Duncan Robinson's been playing great defense all season. Tobias Harris and Cade Cunningham, they work very hard on defense in that starting five. But then you also bring in Ron Holland, you bring in Isaiah Stewart. Dennis Jenkins has been awesome all year. He's scored at an extremely impressive rate, considering that he was on a 2-way contract at the start of the year. He's meant to be playing in the G League. He's already signed off that contract. He's a full-time Piston now. And then you look at the fact that Jalen Duren is playing at an all-star level. 17 points and 10 rebounds a game. Cade Cunningham, 25, 5, and 9. This Pistons team has been really surprising, and they just create so many extra opportunities for themselves because of the way that they play defense. High energy, high physicality, and that physicality is aggravating other teams. If you watch how defeated the Knicks looked after that, I think it was a 35-point win, and you look at the fight that was started against the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets didn't like the physicality, and the actual foul on Duren isn't that strong, but Diabate was just so sick of the way that he's been not hacked, but touched and pushed and, dealt with physically all night, that it boiled over and broke out into this massive fight. It is very aggravating to have to play against this Pistons team, and I can't imagine how annoyed and frustrated teams are going to be when they have to play them for at least 4 games. The Pistons are my favorite to come out of this Eastern Conference at this point. They might be my favorites to win the NBA championship, the whole thing. They just are really, really good, and I hope that this can kind of kickstart a trend of defense in the NBA, that we're not just, watching the same old lack of defense because we have to save our energy for offense. I'm hoping that if the Pistons could win a ring this season, it would set the tone that physical defense is going to win you games in the NBA, and then more teams would adopt that, and we kind of shift back into this really physical defense that would bring attention back to the NBA, because that's a lot of people who watch college basketball and don't watch the NBA. That's always their first complaint, is that that the defense isn't physical. It's not basketball. It's too soft. If we can shift this momentum back, it would be really good for the NBA to have teams consistently night in, night out playing physical defense. And I think that's exactly what a Detroit Pistons championship could do. And I'm not sure that there's a city that deserves it more than Detroit. So, shout out to Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren for playing at such an extremely high level all season. It's a kind of a shame that Cade Cunningham isn't being talked about in the MVP race, but that just kind of is that's a testimony to how highly the level of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Nikola Jokic, and Luka Doncic is, because they're all playing at such a fantastically high level that Cade Cunningham, playing as well as he is, can't get into that conversation. But as of right now, the Detroit Pistons are my favorites to win the NBA championship. Indiana Pacers season has played out exactly as I would have expected it to. Without Tyrese Halliburton, they have definitely struggled. Not to mention that about a third of this season so far, they've been missing a lot of key players. Andrew Nembhard, Benedict Mathurin, Zubac is now hurt. Siakam's now hurt. They've missed T.J. McConnell. Aaron Nesmith has missed time. They're now missing Obi Toppin as well. So they've dealt with a lot of injuries. And it's been a struggle. 14th in the Eastern Conference, 15-40 overall. But there is no doubt in my mind that when Tyrese Halliburton is healthy next season and they can get this group of guys back and maintain health, this team's going to be right back around the playoffs. But this year was always going to be rough for them. They made the move for Zubac, which I think was good, to move off of Benedict Mathurin, which wasn't really working, and it wasn't going to work. It worked early in the season because Halliburton wasn't around, but when Tyrese is around, you didn't want to keep bringing him off the bench, and if you could cash in for something like Zubac, which you really needed as another center, absolutely worth it in my opinion. I could sit here and talk about the stats of this Pacers team, but I don't think it's really fair to them because again, they haven't had their best player all season, and they've missed a lot of guys through injuries. There's been a lot of times where they've lined up with, 4 bench guys starting every game. The only bright spot is they've forced teams to shoot the three poorly at 34% per game. That's second in the NBA. But the rest of it, they're taking an okay care of the ball, just outside the top 10 in that category. They're just very, very injured, and that's how the whole season. I said it in the predictions, the early predictions video, that I thought that this team was going to struggle without Tyrese Halliburton, and it's been very clear that that's the case. Now, there are some bright spots to it. Jay Huff has been very impressive in the short time he's played. He's got this great connection off the bench with T.J. McConnell. Their pick and roll has been very effective in the way that they've played, and it's another weapon for McConnell to use when he comes into the game because he is so aggressive. You saw that throughout all of the playoffs last year. McConnell can really impact games, and to have somebody rolling off of him as well, it makes for a really nice 1-2 combo, not to mention the fact that he is a solid interior defender. He actually spaces the floor pretty well too. He's shooting at 31%, which isn't great, but for a floor spacing big man, you'll take that every day of the week. But yeah, they've just been very injured this season, and they've had to go and trust in some guys who aren't ready to step into the big rotation minutes. And so it's been unfortunate for the Indiana Pacers, but again, I have no doubt with a high draft pick next year and the health of the team progressing well, that this team is going to be right back around in that playoff picture and poised to make another run that they've made in the past 2 years. This division closes out with the Milwaukee Bucks, who I have been wildly surprised by, and that is not a good thing. I said that this Milwaukee Bucks team seemed to be tailored to exactly the play style of Giannis Antetokounmpo. And that, in theory, wasn't that crazy of a thing to say. I was praising Brian Rollins. I said that I liked the move for Miles Turner because having a big sitting outside gave space for Giannis to get downhill. It just so happens that the quality of these guys on this team is just not good. This roster is not good. Kuzma not playing at a very high level. He's only averaging 12 points. That was meant to be the second option on this team. Cam Thomas, that's a good move. I was very glad to see them make the move to pick him up. While Giannis has missed time, he has gone for 34 points in their first game that he played with them, or the second game he played with them. So, Cam Thomas is a scorer. That's what he's going to do. It's going to be interesting to see how he plays when Giannis is healthy and playing minutes for this team. But admittedly, this team is just not playing at the level that I expected. This roster is so much worse than I thought. Guys like Miles Turner and Bobby Portis and Kyle Kuzma have underperformed. Kevin Porter Jr., he's playing well. I'll give him a lot of credit. He's second in the NBA in steals per game, and he's averaging 17 points. shooting 44% from the floor. So Kevin Porter Jr. gets credit. Ryan Rollins, he's averaging 16, 4, and 5. He's done a lot, and when not a lot was expected of him. But I really think that it would have been best for them to move off Giannis. I'm sure they're going to do it in the offseason, but I think it would have been the best thing for them to move off of him now, and just recoup as many draft picks as you could have and seen what happened, because there was definitely a lot of interest. A lot of teams made calls, but the Bucks said they were open, but it didn't seem like any offer was good enough. I don't know what the offers were. They just really weren't actively trying to get rid of Giannis, which I don't blame them for, but at some point you got to cut the guy who has done so much for you some slack. Like, he cannot continue to... He's not going to be able to take this team to the playoffs. This team's probably going to miss the entire play-in, which is insanity to me, considering Giannis is playing at the level he's at, 28 points, 10 rebounds, and just around 6 assists on the season. I mean, I just don't know what else you want from him. What else is he supposed to do to take this team further? There isn't really anything he can do, and this roster is suffering without any real actual scoring. Again, that's why I'm glad they picked up Cam Thomas. It gives them a second option, but before bringing him in, there wasn't really any true second option. Ryan Rollins should not be your second best scorer. Kevin Porter Jr. should not be your second best scorer. But that's how it's played out, because the quality of this roster is not playing to anywhere near the expectation I had for them coming into the season. And Giannis just isn't going to be able to do enough to take them into the play-in, much less the playoffs. So it's an unfortunate season for the Bucks. I think they have to make the decision to move off Giannis Antetokounmpo and just commit to a rebuild, as difficult as that decision is. However, that is the Central Division done. Let me know your thoughts and your comments on the opinions I just presented. If you think that I'm missing on a team, or I'm not doing them justice, or have been too harsh on them, whatever the case may be, or if I'm too high on a team. Maybe you think the Pistons are not even going to make the second round. Feel free to let me know in the comments of this video. And yeah, have a blessed day.